For months, Midgard has withered under an unrelenting sun. Rivers have dried to dust, crops lie barren, and the cries of the starving echo through lifeless fields. Prayers to the gods rise in desperation, but no answers come, only silence. Thor, the god of thunder and protector of Midgard, watches the suffering with a heavy heart. He soon learns the cause. The Emberstone, a relic that maintains the balance of fire and water across the realms, has been stolen and hidden deep within the fiery domain of Muspelheim. Its absence has plunged Midgard into chaos. To retrieve it, Thor must face Surtr, the cunning fire giant who rules Muspelheim. Instead of combat, Surtr offers a wager. If Thor can complete an impossible task, he will return the Emberstone. But failure will cost Thor his greatest weapon, Mjölnir. Welcome to Hugin and Munin stories. This is our story, The Balance of Fire, Thor's Sacrifice. Chapter 1. A World Ablaze. The sun hung motionless over Midgard, a molten orb that turned the earth into a parched wasteland. Fields once green and bountiful now lay brittle and grey, and rivers once teeming with life had become mere ribbons of cracked clay. Farmers knelt in the dust, their hands raw from fruitless labor, as cries of hunger echoed across the land. Temples overflowed with desperate prayers, but no answers came. It was as if the gods themselves had turned their backs on the mortal realm. High above the desolation, Thor stood on the cliffs of Mjölnir, his great hall in Asgard. The sight of Midgard's suffering tightened his chest like an iron vice. Mortals were his charge, and to see them abandoned to despair was a wound he could not endure. His mighty hammer, Mjölnir, rested in his hand, its weight familiar and comforting. Yet today, even its presence did little to ease the storm brewing in his heart. Thor turned to the skies, his voice booming with the fury of 1,000 tempests. Father, this cannot be allowed to continue. If the balance of the realms is broken, we must act. But Odin, seated upon Hidskjalf, merely regarded his son with a measured gaze. His single eye, as piercing as the stars, betrayed no emotion. The drought is no simple calamity, he said, his voice low and solemn. The Emberstone, keeper of fire's balance, is lost. Without its power, the waters of the realms falter. Thor's jaw clenched. Then we must recover it. Tell me where it has gone, and I will bring it back. Odin's gaze darkened. It has been stolen, Thor. Taken by cunning hands into the depths of Muspelheim, and there it lies under the dominion of Surtr. The name struck Thor like a thunderbolt. Surtr, the fire giant of prophecy, who wielded flames strong enough to engulf the world. To confront him was to risk a confrontation that could bring about Ragnarok itself. Yet Thor's resolve only hardened. The mortals of Midgard had placed their faith in him, and he would not fail them. I will face Surtr, Thor declared, no matter the cost. Odin rose, his ravens Hugin and Munin circling above. Be wary, my son. Strength alone will not win this battle. Surtr is a foe unlike any other. He does not seek to strike you down, but to test the measure of your soul. Go with caution, for even gods may gamble and lose. Thor descended from Asgard, Mjölnir crackling with barely restrained energy. Heimdall, the ever-watchful guardian of the Bifrost, met him at the bridge's threshold. Thor, Heimdall warned, his golden eyes filled with concern, Muspelheim is a realm of torment. Its flames burn hotter than any forge, and its denizens are merciless. Even you may falter there. Thor's lips curved into a grim smile. Let them try. My hammer shall sing louder than their flames. With a nod, Heimdall opened the Bifrost. The rainbow bridge shimmered with blinding light, carrying Thor into the heart of Muspelheim. As the colors faded, the air grew stifling and thick with ash. Thor stepped into a world of fire and molten stone, where rivers of lava flowed like veins through the earth. The skies above churned with smoke, blotting out the stars. Ahead, a fortress of obsidian loomed, its towers ablaze with an unholy light. Surtr's hall awaited. Thor's grip tightened on Mjölnir as he advanced, his every step defiant against the blistering heat. The ground cracked and hissed beneath his boots, and shadows danced like living things on the walls of flame. But Thor's determination burned brighter than the fires around him. The fate of Midgard rested on his shoulders, and he would not falter. At the gates of the hall, a voice rumbled like an earthquake, shaking the very ground. "Thor Odinson the Thunderer, you come unbidden to my realm." Surtr emerged, a towering figure wreathed in fire. His eyes burned like twin suns, and his sword, a blade of pure flame, rested casually in his hand. The fire giant regarded Thor with amusement, his laughter deep and mocking. "You seek the Emberstone," Surtr said. "Yet you think to challenge me in my own domain. Foolish god." Thor raised Mjölnir, lightning crackling along its edges. "I will do what I must to save Midgard, even if it means facing you." Surtr's grin widened. "Then let us make a wager, Thunderer. Strength alone cannot best me. Instead, I offer you a task: retrieve the heart of the Inferno from the depths of Muspelheim. Should you succeed, I will grant you the Emberstone. But should you fail, Mjölnir will remain here, in my possession." Thor's breath caught. To part with Mjölnir was unthinkable. It was not merely a weapon, but a part of his very being. Yet the thought of Midgard's suffering steeled his resolve. "I accept your wager," Thor said, his voice steady despite the fire that surged around him. Surtr's laughter echoed through the hall. "Then go, Thunderer. The caverns await, and know this, the path is treacherous, and not all who enter will return." With those words, the ground beneath Thor's feet opened, swallowing him into the fiery depths. The journey had begun. Chapter 2. Into the Inferno. Thor landed with a resounding crash, the molten ground beneath him glowing an angry red. He rose to his feet, shaking off the disorientation, and surveyed his surroundings. The cavern stretched endlessly in all directions, its walls glistening with veins of molten rock. Rivers of lava snaked across the floor, casting an eerie light that flickered like the heartbeat of the realm itself. Above, jagged stalactites dripped with molten embers, each droplet hissing as it hit the searing surface below. The air was suffocating, thick with sulfur and heat that even Thor's godly constitution could not ignore. Sweat beaded on his brow, his breath shallow and labored. This was Muspelheim's true face, unforgiving, relentless, and alive with fire. Thor gripped Mjölnir tightly, its cool metal a small comfort against the oppressive heat. "The heart of the Inferno," he muttered. "I'll find it and end this madness." He strode forward, his boots crunching on charred rock. The path twisted and turned, each step taking him deeper into the labyrinthine caverns. The oppressive silence was broken only by the distant roar of lava and the occasional tremor that shook the ground. Yet, as he ventured further, another sound began to creep into his awareness, a low, whispering murmur, like voices carried on the wind. Thor paused, his gaze darting around the cavern. The whispers grew louder, forming words that chilled him despite the heat. "Thor, protector of Midgard, do you truly believe you can save them?" The voice was his own, yet distorted, twisted with doubt and mockery. Thor tightened his grip on Mjölnir, shaking his head as if to clear the intrusive thoughts. "Tricks of the fire," he muttered. "I will not be swayed." But the whispers persisted, weaving through the air like serpents. They spoke of his failures, the times he had arrived too late to save a village, the battles he had won at the cost of innocent lives. They dredged up memories Thor had buried deep, doubts he refused to acknowledge. With each step, the voices grew louder, pressing against his mind like an unseen weight. Thor's pace faltered. For the first time in centuries, he felt small, vulnerable. Yet he clenched his jaw and pressed on, his resolve burning brighter than the flames around him. The path narrowed, forcing him to navigate a series of treacherous ledges that overlooked a molten chasm. The lava below churned like a living thing, its surface rippling with waves of fiery energy. Thor leaped from ledge to ledge, each landing precarious, his balance tested by the shifting rocks. At last he reached a wide plateau. In the center stood a massive obsidian door, its surface etched with runes that glowed with an ominous light. Thor approached cautiously, studying the runes. They pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to resonate with his own heartbeat. Before he could act, the air around him shimmered. A figure emerged from the shadows, a towering creature forged of flame and shadow. Its eyes burned like twin coals, and its body was wreathed in flickering embers. This was no ordinary denizen of Muspelheim. It was a guardian, a sentinel placed here to prevent any from entering the depths. The creature roared, the sound reverberating through the cavern like a thunderclap. Thor raised Mjölnir, its head sparking with lightning. "So you stand in my way," Thor said, his voice steady. "Then you shall fall." The creature lunged, its massive claws swiping at Thor with blinding speed. Thor dodged, his movements swift despite the heat sapping his strength. He swung Mjölnir in a wide arc, the hammer colliding with the creature's arm. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the air, but the guardian barely flinched. It countered with a blast of fire, the searing heat forcing Thor to leap aside. The battle raged, the cavern shaking with each clash. The creature was relentless, its attacks unyielding, yet Thor held his ground. He summoned a storm within himself, lightning crackling around his form as he channeled his power into his hammer. With a mighty swing, he struck the guardian's chest. The hammer's force sent the creature reeling, its fiery body flickering as it struggled to reform. Thor seized the moment, hurling Mjölnir with all his might. The hammer struck true, shattering the creature's core. It collapsed into a heap of embers, the cavern falling silent once more. Thor retrieved his hammer, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. The battle had drained him, but he could not rest. The door loomed before him, a reminder of the trials yet to come. He placed a hand on the obsidian surface, the runes flaring to life at his touch. The door groaned, its massive slabs parting to reveal a tunnel that descended into the fiery heart of Muspelheim. Thor stepped forward, his resolve unshaken. The heart of the Inferno awaited, and with it, the salvation of Midgard. Yet he knew the whispers would return, and the trials would only grow more perilous. As the door sealed behind him, Thor whispered to himself, "Strength will carry me forward, but I must also be wise, for even gods can falter in the face of the unknown." Chapter 3. The Heart of the Inferno. Thor's descent into the depths of Muspelheim was a journey through the essence of fire itself. The tunnel spiraled downward, its walls glowing with molten veins that pulsed like living arteries. The oppressive heat pressed against his chest, searing his lungs with each breath. Even Thor's divine endurance began to falter, sweat streaming down his face as though he were mortal. Each step weighed heavier than the last, not from fatigue alone, but from the insidious whispers that returned, curling like smoke around his mind. "Thor, protector of Midgard, what have you truly protected?" The voice was not Surtr's, but his own, distorted and cruel. Visions flickered before his eyes, unbidden. A woman kneeling in ash, clutching her child. A village smoldering after a frost giant raid. Thor, standing victorious, his hammer stained with blood, but victory had come too late to save the lives that mattered most. He shook his head, gripping Mjölnir tighter. "These are lies," he muttered, his voice a growl that barely reached his own ears. The whispers deepened, showing faces of those who had prayed for him, their lips moving in silent pleas that had gone unanswered. The weight of their blame pressed on his shoulders, more crushing than the fiery air. Thor stumbled, his breath ragged, and braced himself against the tunnel wall. For the first time, doubt crept into his heart. Am I truly the protector they believe me to be? Have I failed more than I have saved? He closed his eyes, grounding himself in the steady hum of his hammer's energy. The whispering quieted and his vision cleared, leaving behind a single thought. There is no room for doubt now. I will not fail Midgard again. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling disappearing into a haze of ashen heat. At its center stood a pedestal of blackened stone, upon which rested the heart of the inferno. The gem pulsed with an inner fire, its fierce glow casting long, writhing shadows across the chamber walls. Thor stepped forward cautiously, every sense on edge. The air felt alive, vibrating with an ancient power. The molten ground shifted beneath his boots, fissures cracking and hissing, as if warning him to turn back. But his focus remained on the heart, its brilliance a beacon calling to him. Just as his hand hovered over the gem, a deep rumble shook the chamber. The fissures widened, and the oppressive heat surged, becoming almost unbearable. From the largest chasm emerged a colossal figure, its molten scales gleaming like gold in the firelight. Massive wings unfurled, casting the chamber into shadow, and blazing eyes locked onto Thor with a predatory gaze. Vernax, the ancient dragon of Muspelheim, had awoken. The dragon's roar shattered the silence, a deafening symphony of fire and fury that shook the chamber to its core. Flames burst from its maw, licking the walls and turning the molten floor into a seething cauldron. Thor stood his ground, raising his hammer as lightning crackled around him. "If you are the guardian of the heart," he bellowed, "then know that no fire burns hotter than my resolve." Vernax lunged with terrifying speed, its massive claws tearing through the air. Thor rolled aside, the ground where he had stood erupting in flames. He countered with a swing of his hammer, the crackling energy slamming into the dragon's flank. The impact sent sparks flying, but the beast merely roared, its fiery body unyielding. The dragon's tail lashed out, catching Thor mid-strike and sending him crashing into the chamber wall. He rose quickly, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. The battle was not one of brute strength alone. He would need strategy to defeat this foe. Thor took in the surroundings, the unstable ground, the flowing lava, the narrow ledges that framed the chamber. An idea sparked in his mind. He feinted toward Vernax, drawing its attention, then leapt onto a ledge above the dragon. The beast followed, its massive weight causing the ledge to crumble and sending them both tumbling to the molten floor below. The dragon's roar of frustration shook the chamber, but Thor saw his chance. He charged, using the distraction to land a powerful blow to the creature's head. Lightning surged through Mjölnir, stunning the beast for a brief moment. But Vernax recovered quickly, flames erupting from its maw in a blazing torrent. The heat was unbearable, forcing Thor to shield himself with Mjölnir's energy. The strain was immense, his muscles trembling as he held the line against the firestorm. Yet, amid the chaos, he saw the dragon's movements falter. Its attacks were wild, driven by rage rather than precision. Thor's lips curled into a grim smile. "Pride will be your undoing, beast." He darted forward, weaving through the flames and leaping onto the dragon's back. The molten scales burned against his skin, but he ignored the pain, climbing toward its head. Vernax thrashed wildly, trying to shake him off, but Thor held firm. With a mighty roar of his own, Thor raised Mjölnir high and brought it down on the dragon's skull. The hammer struck with a deafening crack, releasing a surge of energy that illuminated the chamber like a lightning storm. The dragon let out a final, guttural cry, as its fiery form collapsed, dissipating into embers that swirled in the hot air. Thor rolled to the ground, breathing heavily, his body aching from the battle. The chamber fell silent, save for the low hum of the heart of the inferno. He rose slowly, his gaze fixed on the pedestal. As he approached, he reached out and grasped the heart. Its searing heat burned his palm, but he did not let go. The gem's fiery light pulsed in rhythm with his own heartbeat, and for a moment he felt a strange connection to its raw power, a force of both creation and destruction. The ground beneath him trembled, cracks spreading across the chamber as if Muspelheim itself protested his claim. Thor turned toward the tunnel, the heart of the inferno in hand. He had won this battle, but the final challenge awaited him in Surtr's hall. With renewed resolve, he whispered to himself, for Midgard, no sacrifice is too great. And he stepped into the flames once more. And he stepped into the flames once more. Chapter 4. A Gamble with Fire. Thor emerged from the depths of Muspelheim, the heart of the inferno clutched tightly in his hand. The air above was no less suffocating, the molten rivers still carving fiery paths through the landscape, but his resolve burned brighter than the oppressive heat. Every step towards Surtr's hall was heavy, not just with exhaustion, but with the knowledge of what lay ahead. The obsidian gates of Surtr's fortress groaned open, revealing the fire giant seated upon a throne of molten stone. His colossal form was a beacon of flame and power, his burning eyes fixed on Thor with amused contempt. Surtr leaned forward, his sword of fire resting casually across his knees. "You return, Thunderer," Surtr rumbled. "But tell me, does the heart burn hotter in your hand or in your soul?" Thor stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fire that seemed to consume the very air. "Enough games, Surtr. I have the heart. Fulfill your end of the bargain." Surtr grinned, his fiery teeth glinting. But bargains with fire are never simple. The heart's power is not easily wielded, even by one such as you. To reignite the Emberstone, you must bind the heart to it with more than strength. You must sacrifice." Thor's brow furrowed. Sacrifice what? Surtr rose, his towering frame casting shadows across the hall. "A piece of yourself, Thunderer. The heart demands a sliver of your divine spark, your very essence. Without it, the Emberstone will remain cold, and Midgard will fall into ruin." The weight of those words settled over Thor like a mountain. His divine spark was not just his power, it was his identity, his immortality, the force that made him a god. To part with even a fragment of it would leave him changed, perhaps weakened. Yet the thought of Midgard's suffering eclipsed his fears. Thor's voice was steady, though his heart quaked. "If that is the cost, I will pay it. No sacrifice is too great for Midgard." Surtr's grin widened, a flicker of respect in his burning eyes. "Then let the flames bear witness." Thor stepped forward, raising the heart of the inferno high. Its fiery glow enveloped him, tendrils of heat wrapping around his body. Closing his eyes, Thor reached deep within himself, summoning his divine spark. It pulsed within him like a living storm, a force of thunder and fury. Slowly, painfully, he guided a sliver of it into the heart. The pain was unlike anything he had known. It was not the searing heat of Muspelheim, but an emptiness, a void that hollowed him from within. Lightning crackled uncontrollably around him, his body trembling as his spark was torn apart. The world blurred, and for a moment, Thor felt as though he might collapse under the weight of the loss. But then, the heart flared brilliantly, its light illuminating the hall in a cascade of golden fire. When the glow subsided, the heart was transformed. Its once chaotic flames now burned steady and pure, a beacon of balance and power. Surtr gestured to a pedestal where the Emberstone rested, dark and lifeless. Thor approached, placing the heart beside it. The two relics resonated, their energies intertwining in a dance of fire and light. The Emberstone reignited, its brilliance cascading through the hall like a sunrise after an endless night. Thor turned to Surtr, his voice firm despite his weariness. The wager is complete. I have upheld my end. Now keep your word. The fire giant inclined his head, his grin tempered by a rare solemnity. You have won this gamble, Thunderer. Take the Emberstone and leave my realm. But remember this, you have given much today. Yet the fires of Ragnarok are not so easily extinguished. One day the stakes will be higher and the cost far greater. Thor retrieved the Emberstone, its warmth a comfort in his hands. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the gates, his steps heavy but resolute. As he crossed the threshold, Surtr's laughter echoed behind him, a haunting reminder of battles yet to come. When Thor returned to Midgard, the skies opened at last, releasing a deluge of rain that drenched the parched land. Rivers swelled with life, crops began to sprout anew, and the cries of hunger were replaced with shouts of joy. Mortals emerged from their homes, their faces turned skyward in awe and gratitude. For them, Thor had answered their prayers. But Thor stood apart, watching the rain with a distant gaze. The Emberstone hung at his side, its light dim now that its power was restored. He should have felt triumph, relief even, but instead there was a hollowness within him, a wound that would not heal. Thor clenched his fist, his voice barely above a whisper. A sliver of my spark, it should have been nothing. Yet it was not nothing. The absence was profound, like losing a fragment of his soul. He felt weaker, slower. The ever-present storm within him quieter than before. The thought gnawed at him. What if he faced another foe like Vernax? Or something worse? What if next time he failed? The whispers of Muspelheim returned, faint and distant now. They did not mock or accuse him this time, but carried a warning, echoing Surtr's words. The games of gods are never-ending, Thunderer. What will you wager when Ragnarok calls? Thor exhaled deeply, his gaze fixed on the horizon where storm clouds gathered. His hand tightened around Mjölnir's handle, its cool weight grounding him in the present. He had given much, but he was still Thor, protector of Midgard. Even with a diminished spark, he would fight for the realm that depended on him. For Midgard, he murmured. Always. And with that, we say goodbye for this time. Thank you for listening to our story, The Balance of Fire, Thor's Sacrifice.